The guardian of the void. The vast emptiness between stars had always been a place of wonder and discovery for the species of the Galactic Federation. For over 2,000 cycles, the 17 founding races had explored the cosmos together, sharing knowledge and resources in peaceful coexistence. Their exploration vessels were marvels of collaborative engineering, elegant, efficient, and above all, designed for scientific inquiry. Captain Valrez of the GFS Enlightenment stood on the observation deck, her 4 arms folded across her luminescent carapace as she gazed at the unfamiliar star system ahead. The blue-white primary star burned fiercely, its light reflecting off the crystalline growths that adorned her exoskeleton. "We're approaching the coordinates, Captain," announced First Navigator Pelna, his gelatinous form rippling with iridescent colors. "The signal originates from the 4th planet." Valrez clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "Maintain distance protocols. This system isn't in any of our charts." The Enlightenment represented the pinnacle of Federation technology, a gleaming vessel of curved alloys and transparent viewports that showcased the beauty of space to its occupants. At just under half a kilometer in length, it carried a crew of 200 specialists from 12 different species, all dedicated to expanding the Federation's knowledge of the universe. "Captain, I'm detecting an anomalous energy signature," reported Science Officer Tizil, her feathered crest rising in excitement. "It's unlike anything in our database." Valrez moved to the holographic display at the center of the bridge. The energy reading pulsed like a heartbeat, powerful and rhythmic. "Origin. It appears to be moving, Captain." Emerging from behind the system's gas giant, the bridge fell silent as the view screen adjusted, magnifying a distant object that was slowly coming into view. At first, it appeared to be nothing more than a shadow against the stars, but as the ship's sensors focused, the shadow took form. "By the ancestors," whispered Pelna, his translucent skin blanching to a pale blue. What emerged from behind the gas giant defied all Federation understanding of spacefaring technology. Unlike the smooth, organic lines of Federation vessels, this ship was angular and imposing. Its dark hull was broken only by what were unmistakably weapon emplacements, dozens, perhaps hundreds of them, bristling along its flanks like the spines of a predator. At over 2 kilometers in length, it dwarfed the Enlightenment, its presence alone a silent declaration of power. "Are those weapon systems?" asked Tizil, her voice barely audible. Valrez felt her secondary heart begin to beat rapidly. In 2,000 cycles of exploration, the Federation had encountered many species with varying levels of technology, but never had they found one that built vessels so explicitly designed for warfare. Federation ships carried defensive systems, of course. Space was dangerous, after all. But this behemoth before them was something else entirely. It was a predator among scholars. "It's altering course," reported the tactical officer, his thick reptilian scales flushing with stress hormones. "It's heading directly toward us." "Defensive posture," ordered Valrez, her training overriding her shock. "Shields at maximum. Prepare diplomatic channels." The massive vessel continued its approach, seemingly unhurried yet covering the distance with alarming speed. As it drew closer, details became clearer. Battle scars etched into its hull, massive engines glowing with restrained power, and what appeared to be launch bays large enough to hold vessels the size of the Enlightenment itself. "Captain, we're being scanned," reported Tizil. "Their technology. It's penetrating our shields as if they weren't even there." Before Valrez could respond, the communication array chimed. "We're receiving a transmission," said communications specialist Mira, her tentacles working frantically over her console. "Audio and visual. Universal translator is processing now." "On screen," ordered Valrez, straightening her posture and adjusting her ceremonial captain's sash. First contact protocols were clear: project confidence, openness, and peaceful intent. The view screen flickered, and for the first time, the crew of the Enlightenment gazed upon a human. The being before them stood tall, its body encased in a dark uniform adorned with symbols of unknown meaning. Its face was hairless except for a strip of dark fur above its eyes and a short cropped covering on the top of its head. But it was the eyes that captured Valoris's attention. They were alert, intelligent, and assessing, like those of an apex predator evaluating potential prey. "This is Captain Marcus Chen of the United Earth Defense Force vessel Thermopylae." The being spoke, its voice deep and resonant. "You have entered restricted space. Identify yourselves and state your purpose." The universal translator rendered the message in Standard Federation, but even through translation, the commanding tone was unmistakable. This was not a request. It was a demand backed by the silent threat of the massive warship. Valoris stepped forward, her luminescent patterns shifting to convey openness and diplomacy. A gesture lost on the alien captain, she realized. "I am Captain Valoris of the Galactic Federation vessel Enlightenment. We are an exploration ship on a mission of peaceful discovery. We detected an unusual signal from this system and came to investigate." She paused, then added, "We were unaware this region was claimed by any spacefaring civilization." The human's expression remained unchanged. "Your vessel is scanning military installations. This could be construed as an act of aggression." Tizil chirped in alarm. "Captain, we're only using standard exploratory scans." Valoris raised a hand to silence her officer. "Captain Chen, I assure you, our intentions are purely scientific. The Galactic Federation comprises 17 species who explore the cosmos together in peace. We would welcome the opportunity to establish diplomatic relations with your people." Something flickered across the human's face, a subtle change that Valoris couldn't interpret. After a moment, Chen nodded. "We will escort you to Outpost Sentinel. From there, diplomatic channels can be established. Deviate from our course, and we will consider it hostile action." Chen out. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Captain," Pelna's voice quavered slightly, "their vessel. Those are planet-killer weapons. Why would any species need such destructive capability?" Valoris had no answer. In all her cycles of exploration, she had never encountered a species that dedicated so much of its technology to warfare. The Federation's philosophy had always been that advanced civilizations naturally evolved beyond conflict, channeling their energies into art, science, and exploration. "Follow their escort coordinates," she ordered, "and prepare a diplomatic team. It seems we have much to learn about these humans." As the Enlightenment adjusted course to follow the behemoth warship, Valoris couldn't shake the feeling that the Federation's fundamental understanding of the cosmos had just been challenged. What kind of history had shaped a species to build such instruments of destruction? What enemies did they face that required such overwhelming force? The journey to Outpost Sentinel was tense. The human warship maintained a position that kept its main weapon batteries trained on the Enlightenment, a fact not lost on Valoris's tactical officer. When they finally arrived, the outpost itself proved to be another shock. It was a massive structure orbiting the system's fourth planet, bristling with the same weapon systems as the Thermopylae. Surrounding it were dozens of smaller vessels, each clearly designed for combat rather than exploration or trade. A shuttle was dispatched from the Enlightenment carrying Valoris, Tizil, and Mira, a small diplomatic team representing the Federation's scientific and communicative expertise. As they approached the docking bay, the sheer scale of human military engineering became even more apparent. The bay could have housed 50 shuttles their size, and armed personnel were visible at every access point. They were met by a delegation led by Captain Chen, who now stood flanked by officers in various uniforms. Up close, humans were even more imposing, taller than Valoris had estimated, with dense musculature visible even through their uniforms. "Welcome to Outpost Sentinel," Chen said, his voice echoing in the cavernous docking bay. "I apologize for the security protocols, but we've had difficult first contact experiences in the past." Valoris performed the Federation's universal greeting, a complex gesture involving all 4 of her arms. "We understand caution, Captain." The unknown can be frightening. Chen's expression remained neutral. The unknown isn't what frightens us, Captain Walrus. It's what we know is out there. He gestured toward a corridor. This way to the diplomatic suite. Admiral Reeves is waiting to speak with you. As they walked through the outpost, Walrus observed the humans around them. They moved with purpose, their bodies always positioned for action. Even those engaged in seemingly mundane tasks maintained an awareness of their surroundings that spoke of ingrained vigilance. Your species seems very prepared for conflict, Tizil observed, her scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic caution. One of Chen's officers, a shorter female with fiery red head fur, responded, "We don't have a choice. Humanity learned early that the galaxy doesn't reward the unprepared." Before Walrus could inquire further, they arrived at a large chamber dominated by a circular table. At its head stood an older human, his face lined with what Walrus would later learn were the marks of age and experience. "I am Admiral James Reeves, Earth Defense Force," he introduced himself. "Please, be seated. We have much to discuss." What followed was a crash course in human history, a tale so filled with conflict and struggle that Walrus found it difficult to comprehend. Humans had fought among themselves for resources, territory, and ideologies for most of their recorded history. When they finally achieved unity, it was not through philosophical enlightenment, but through the threat of mutual destruction and the subsequent realization that their survival depended on cooperation. Their venture into space had been driven not by curiosity alone, but by the pragmatic need to secure resources beyond their homeworld. And when they encountered their first alien species, the now extinct Vraxian horde, it was not a peaceful exchange of knowledge, but a bloody first contact that nearly ended with human extinction. The Vraxians didn't respond to diplomatic overtures, Admiral Reeves explained, his voice heavy with the weight of memory. They saw our colonies as easy targets. 3 worlds burned before we managed to develop weapons that could penetrate their shields. Walrus felt her mandibles trembling. "This explains your predisposition toward military preparedness." Reeves's laugh was without humor. "Predisposition. Captain, the Thermopylae you encountered is just one of our border patrol vessels. The full might of the Earth Defense Fleet exists because we've learned that in this galaxy, peace is maintained through strength." As the diplomatic meeting continued, cultural differences became increasingly apparent. The Federation's philosophy of non-interference and gradual technological exchange clashed with humanity's direct, security-focused approach. Humans valued honesty to the point of bluntness, a trait that Mira, with her species' nuanced communication patterns, found particularly challenging. By the time they returned to the Enlightenment, Walrus's mind was reeling. The Federation Council would need to be informed immediately. Humanity represented not just a new potential member species, but a fundamental challenge to the Federation's understanding of advanced civilization. As her shuttle approached the Enlightenment, Walrus looked back at the imposing silhouette of the Thermopylae against the stars. For the first time in her career as an explorer, she felt a chill of uncertainty about the cosmos. If humanity had built such weapons of war, what other horrors might lurk in the unexplored corners of the galaxy? Little did she know, both the Federation and humanity would soon face a threat that would put both their philosophies to the ultimate test: trial by fire. The diplomatic tensions between the Galactic Federation delegation and their human hosts had barely begun to ease when the attack came. No warnings, no demands, just the sudden appearance of 12 crystalline vessels dropping out of faster-than-light travel barely 5,000 kilometers from Outpost Sentinel. "Helix Swarm," shouted one of the human tactical officers, triggering an immediate station-wide alert. Walrus and her team had been in the midst of a cultural exchange session when the alarms blared. Captain Chen appeared at the doorway, his previous diplomatic reserve replaced by focused intensity. "Your ship is in danger," he stated flatly. "The Helix have arrived, and they don't distinguish between human and non-human targets. They simply consume." Before Walrus could fully process this information, the deck beneath them shuddered violently. direct hit on outer defense grid, reported a voice over the station's communication system. Sectors 7 through 12 reporting hull breaches. Chen's hand moved to a communication device at his wrist. Thermopylae, Combat Deployment Protocol Sierra. Protect the Federation vessel. He looked at Valorous, his eyes hard. Your ship doesn't have the defenses to withstand a helix attack. Stay here where it's safe. Valorous straightened to her full height, her exoskeleton glinting under the emergency lighting. My crew is on the Enlightenment. If they're in danger, my place is with them. Something like respect flickered across Chen's face. Then we go together. My shuttle is armed. It's your best chance of reaching your vessel alive. The journey from Outpost Sentinel to where the Enlightenment orbited was a harrowing experience Valorous would never forget. The human shuttle was indeed armed, heavily so, with weapon systems that seemed excessive for a transport vessel. As they navigated through the chaos of battle, Valorous witnessed firsthand what human warfare truly meant. The Thermopylae had positioned itself between the attacking Helix vessels and the defenseless Enlightenment. Its weapon systems, previously dormant during the diplomatic encounter, were now fully engaged, releasing devastating barrages that tore through the crystalline hulls of the smaller Helix ships. But the human warship wasn't merely destructive. It was executing complex defensive maneuvers, deliberately drawing fire away from both the Federation vessel and vulnerable sections of Outpost Sentinel. What are these Helix creatures? Tizil asked, her scientific curiosity evident even in the midst of crisis. Chen didn't take his eyes off the pilot controls as he maneuvered through a field of debris. Silicon-based hive consciousness. They appeared in the Orion Spur about 15 Earth years ago. They consume resources, particularly metals and radioactive materials, and assimilate technology. They don't communicate, negotiate, or show mercy. A crystalline shard larger than their shuttle tumbled past the viewport. Debris from a destroyed Helix vessel. We lost 3 colony worlds before we developed effective countermeasures, Chen continued. Even now, we're just keeping them contained, not defeating them. As they approached the Enlightenment, Valorous could see the Federation vessel was already under attack. 2 smaller Helix ships had broken through the Thermopylae's defensive screen and were firing crystalline projectiles at the exploration vessel's engines. Your shields won't hold much longer, Chen observed grimly. Pilot, evasive pattern delta. Weapons, target the nearest Helix vessel's propulsion nodes. The shuttle suddenly accelerated, banking at an angle that stressed its inertial dampeners. Energy weapons fired from multiple hardpoints, striking the crystalline vessel with surprising precision. The Helix ship's formation briefly destabilized, its attack on the Enlightenment pausing. That won't stop them for long, Chen warned as they approached the Enlightenment's docking bay. Once we're aboard, we need to get your ship out of the combat zone. The docking procedure was executed with practiced efficiency despite the chaos around them. As they rushed onto the Enlightenment's bridge, Valorous found her crew in a state of controlled panic. The Federation vessel's minimal defensive capabilities were clearly inadequate against the Helix threat. Captain, First Navigator Pelma's gelatinous form quivered with relief. We thought you were lost. Status report, demanded Valorous, falling back on training. Shields at 27% and failing. Engines damage. We can achieve 80% of standard acceleration at best. 3 casualties in engineering when a power conduit ruptured. Chen stepped forward, examining the tactical displays with a professional eye. Your ship can't outrun them, and it certainly can't outfight them. He turned to Valorous. But we might have another option. What followed was a crash course in human tactical thinking. Chen quickly integrated with the Enlightenment systems, establishing a direct communication link with the Thermopylae. Together with Valorous, they devised a plan that utilized both vessels' strengths, the Federation ship's advanced sensor systems, and the human warship's devastating firepower. The Helix coordinate their attacks through quantum resonance, Chen explained as he reprogrammed the Enlightenment's scientific scanners. Your sensors can detect the resonance patterns better than ours. If you can identify their synchronization frequencies, the Thermopylae can disrupt them. The Bridge of the Enlightenment transformed from a place of scientific discovery to an impromptu battle station. Tizil worked frantically with Chen's tactical officer, recalibrating sensors originally designed to study stellar phenomena to instead track the subtle quantum fluctuations between helix vessels. "I have it," Tizil announced finally, transmitting frequency patterns to the Thermopylae now. On the main view screen, they watched as the human warship adjusted its attack pattern. Instead of targeting the helix vessels directly, it began firing precisely modulated energy pulses into seemingly empty space between them. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The crystalline ship's coordinated movements faltered, their formation dissolving into chaos. "It's working," exclaimed Pelna. Chen's expression remained grim. Not for long. They adapt quickly. True to his prediction, the helix vessels began to regroup, shifting to a new formation pattern. But the brief disruption had created an opening. 3 more human vessels emerged from FTL travel at the edge of the system, reinforcements from deeper in human space. "This is Commander Rivera of the EDF Leviathan," came a transmission. "Thermopylae, we have your back. Get the civilians to safety." What happened next demonstrated the true capabilities of human military technology. The arriving warships coordinated their attacks with a precision that left even the tactically naive Federation crew in awe. Massive railgun accelerators launched projectiles at velocities approaching a significant fraction of light speed. Energy weapons cut through helix hulls with surgical precision. And most impressive of all, the human vessels moved in perfect coordination, protecting each other's vulnerable points while maximizing offensive coverage. But even with the arrival of reinforcements, the battle remained desperate. One of the human destroyers, the Valiant, sustained critical damage protecting the Enlightenment from a concentrated helix attack. Walrus watched in horror as the human vessel's reactor containment failed, the ship detonating in a brilliant flash that consumed 3 helix vessels in its final act. "They sacrificed themselves," whispered Mira, her tentacles curling in distress. Chen's face was a mask of controlled grief. The Valiant's crew knew the stakes. They chose to protect your people over themselves. As the battle continued, the Thermopylae positioned itself to escort the damaged Enlightenment away from the conflict zone. But just as they began to withdraw, the largest helix vessel broke through the human defensive line, its crystalline weapons charging for what would clearly be a devastating strike against the Federation ship. "Evasive maneuvers," ordered Walrus, but she knew their damaged engines couldn't move them quickly enough. Captain Chen's voice was calm as he activated his communication link. "Thermopylae, Omega Protocol. Authorization, Chen 9 to 7 Delta." The massive human warship suddenly accelerated, placing itself directly between the Enlightenment and the incoming helix beam. The energy discharge struck the Thermopylae's port side, cutting deep into its armored hull. "Dive, dive, dive," Chen shouted to the Enlightenment's pilot. "Take us below the engagement plane, now." As the Federation vessel desperately maneuvered away, the Thermopylae engaged its remaining weapons, focusing all firepower on the helix flagship. The exchange was brutal and swift. The crystalline vessel shattered under the concentrated barrage, but not before landing several more devastating hits on the human warship. "Thermopylae reports critical reactor damage," reported Mira, her translator struggling to keep up with the rapid human communications. They're venting plasma to prevent a core breach. The battle's tide had turned with the destruction of the helix flagship. The remaining crystalline vessels began to retreat, pursued by the human reinforcements. But the cost had been high. 1 human destroyer destroyed, the Thermopylae critically damaged, and the outpost Sentinel suffering significant structural damage. In the battle's aftermath, as Federation medical teams worked alongside human medics to treat the injured, a profound shift occurred in the relationship between the 2 civilizations. The humans had not hesitated to place themselves in harm's way to protect beings they had just met. They had demonstrated not just military prowess, but a deep-seated courage and selflessness that resonated with the Federation's highest ideals. 2 weeks later, a formal ceremony was held aboard the repaired Enlightenment. Admiral Reeves, his uniform adorned with symbols of command, stood before a mixed assembly of human and Federation representatives. Captain Chin, his arm in a medical stabilizer from injuries sustained during the battle, stood at attention nearby. The attack on Outpost Sentinel was not an isolated incident. Reeves addressed the gathering. The Helix represent just one of several existential threats humanity has encountered since venturing beyond our solar system. We built warships not out of aggression, but out of necessity, because we learned the hard way that the cosmos is not always kind. Valrys stepped forward, her ceremonial robes glinting in the ship's lights. The Galactic Federation has existed for over 2,000 cycles, she began. In that time, we have encountered many species, but none quite like humanity. We mistook your military preparedness for aggression, your caution for hostility. Today, I acknowledge that we were wrong. She gestured to the view screen showing the damaged but still formidable Thermopylae. Your warriors sacrificed themselves to protect strangers. Your technology, which we initially feared, saved countless Federation lives. The Federation Council has authorized me to extend a formal invitation. Join us, not just as allies, but as teachers. Help us prepare for a universe more dangerous than we imagined. Admiral Reeves exchanged a glance with Captain Chen before responding. The United Earth Government accepts your invitation, Captain Valrys, but we suggest a mutual exchange. Your peoples have mastered peaceful cooperation across species boundaries, something humanity has struggled with even among ourselves. Perhaps we can learn from each other. As the ceremony concluded with the formal signing of the First Earth Federation Accord, Valrys found herself standing beside Captain Chen at the observation deck, gazing at the stars. Your ship, she said finally, the Thermopylae. I researched the name. It was a battle in human history, a last stand against overwhelming odds. Chen nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. 300 warriors holding back an invading army of thousands, sacrificing themselves so their civilization could prepare and ultimately triumph. A fitting name, Valrys acknowledged, though I hope future human vessels might bear names celebrating peace rather than battle. Chen's expression turned thoughtful. Perhaps someday. But until then, know that while humanity builds warships, we do so not out of love for war, but out of love for what we protect. He gestured towards the stars. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders, Captain Valrys, but it's also full of dangers. Together, perhaps we can enjoy the wonders while defending against the dangers. As the Enlightenment prepared to return to Federation space with news of their unexpected alliance, Valrys couldn't help but reflect on how profoundly her understanding had changed. The humans' massive warships, which had initially inspired fear and incomprehension, now represented something else entirely, a shield behind which peaceful exploration could continue. The Federation had always believed that advanced civilization meant moving beyond conflict. Humanity had shown them that sometimes protecting peace required the strength and will to defend it. It was a lesson that would reshape the galaxy for generations to come. Retroclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.